I now have my old friend and adversary, Charlie Wolf, on the line. Charlie is a U.S. political commentator. He won't mind me reminding you that he is a Republican and a supporter of President Trump. And because he's a pal of mine, he comes on the show, and I'm glad of that. Charlie, thanks.
Thank you, George. And you got to admit, it's been a pretty good week for Mr. Trump, hasn't it?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. You say so, but the world's on fire. So if you judge it by how much flame there is on terra firma, I suppose it has been a good week. What do you say?
Well, I think there's a lot of flame, but it's flame that doesn't need to be there. I'm a bit surprised by even the UK. I was quite surprised by the performance by Emily Thornberry in the Commons the other day in response to the Foreign Secretary. I thought that was a bit ad hominem in nature and a little bit above the top.
Although the Foreign Secretary also strongly opposed Trump's decision, yeah?
That's fair enough. He has a right to do that, but I respectfully disagree. But I think Emily Thornberry made it personal, and that the man hadn't a clue what's going on in the world. But considering what's going on in North Korea right now, and the strides they seem to be making, hopefully making, I think he's a little bit more up on the game than the shadow foreign secretary may be.
Well, nobody, and least of all me, could take away from Trump that he appears close. We'll see, of course, in Singapore. I knew it wouldn't be Mongolia, by the way, Charlie, because there's not a single McDonald's in Mongolia. I checked out. I'm thinking of opening one if you want to come in with me.
I am surprised because I know that the Brits say that you can at one point the sun never set on the British Empire, but nowadays you can navigate the world by the Golden Arches.
Yes,
I guess except for Mongolia.
Yes, except in Mongolia, and that's what scuppered their chances of holding the summit there. So it's going to be in Singapore, where the food will definitely be better. I mean, I've been in Mongolia. It's a boiled yak for most of the time. A yak burger rather than a mac burger.
Yeah,
but
so work that into the song. 2 raw beef yak patties, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed.
Exactly. Now, Charlie, it does seem a paradox that Trump wants peace in the Korean peninsula, but at the same time has effectively declared war on Iran.
No, I would suggest that respectfully that he wants peace in both. But what people think is possibly peace in the Middle East with Iran is a sort of a situation of the emperor's new clothes. And I think Mr. Trump is one of the first, along with, I'd say, Benjamin Netanyahu, to say, no, the Iranians are, well, if not naked, let's say they're dressed for war, and maybe everybody else is a bit naked. I think he's good at one thing. It's looking at deals and contracts and treaties, and he's done that obviously for his entire career. And he looked at that piece of paper, and I think it probably was worth less than even the climate, the Paris climate change initiative. It's not out of the narrative is that it's out of spite against President Obama or one thing or the other. No, I think he's looked at these different things individually and said, wait a minute. They're trying to screw us over, to put it in colloquial language, if I may. And the Paris climate change, I think, was a case in point. He wouldn't sign it because it was economically predatory towards the states. And funny enough, he said, listen, I'd be glad, I'm a little bit not necessarily convinced on the science, but I'll be glad to talk to you some more and come up with something maybe that works and it doesn't screw us over. And funny enough, what did the EU say, and the climate change field says, oh, no, this is the deal. So, obviously they were seeking something other than clouds and rain, I think.
It's a bit like, Charlie, the mother who attends the passing out parade at Aldershot and turns to the officer and says, everyone on this parade is out of step except my son. Donald Trump is the only person amongst the entire panoply of world leaders of the big powers who thinks that the Iran deal should be broken. So you're saying that Trump, the brain of the US, is smarter than the Prime Minister of Britain, the President of France, the Chancellor of Germany, the heads of the EU, and so on. Why are they so convinced that the deal is a good one?
I'm not sure so much if it's because one's smarter than the other. I think it more goes to what Amanda used to say when someone would make a statement. If I remember correctly, she would say, "What's your premise?" And I think that's the question we have to ask here. And in the case of, I think most of these world leaders, including the Prime Minister and Mr. Macron, President Macron of France, and the others, they see a couple things. One, in the case of President Obama, and especially his Secretary of State John Kerry, it was legacy and the chance to have a deal of some sort, a piece in our time, piece of paper to take home. John Kerry, from what I understand, the other day, U.S. News was reporting that he was literally negotiating, sort of in a deep state function, was negotiating on his own with the Iranians, almost taking their position, which is highly unusual for someone who's been a past foreign secretary. You're supposed to be kind of sticking up to the current administration, and you don't go against it, especially in foreign lands. But that's John Kerry for you, a man with very little principle, to tell you the truth.
Well, he's a man that fought bravely in Vietnam, unlike Donald Trump.
Well, I think he fought bravely because it was a bit of an I think a lot of that was ego with John Kerry. This thought that we're a big rich Irish family like the Kennedys, and maybe he thought he should have been John F. Kennedy.
Well, at least he went, Charlie. Your leader got 5 deferments.
Well, if you can't serve, you can't serve. I don't think you can start blaming, taking it down. I think that the courage.
It doesn't hobble him much on the golf course, Charles.
Well, I think the act of courage is standing alone against all the others when you see something that is not right. And again, I think this was the problem here. You had people that were based on different premises. One was maybe freeing up a heck of a lot of money, which was granted was the Iranians' money. But the reason I think the French and the EU especially wanted to see that freed up was because it was money they could then buy and sell with. So there's a bit of profit motive in mind.
Well, you're usually in favor of that.
Oh, I am when it's legitimate. I just don't think that in this case, I think in this case they're selling their soul for a mess of pottage and maybe a barrel of oil, whatever the case may be.
Well, look, Charlie, let's talk about. I'm sorry to stick on this point, but I was quite shocked. I was quite shocked by what you said about John Kerry. Let's talk about someone, therefore, from your own party. Let's talk about someone who not only served bravely, but was supposedly at least tortured in Hanoi. Senator John McCain.
Yes.
Now, John McCain, a Republican, war hero, he's against Trump on the Iran deal. He says when America signs a treaty, it should abide by it, or no one will sign treaties with us in the future.
Again, with the deepest respect to John McCain, who is a bona fide war hero without a doubt. He is also, I think, more on the left or liberal side of the Republican Party. And though I understand what he's saying, and you would hope normally that one would keep the treaties, but if the treaty is a bad treaty, if a predecessor, and I think as a former member of Parliament, you will understand that you cannot hold a future government to the treaty or to the whims of a past government. You couldn't, as an MP or as a legislative body, make rules to constrict future parliaments, could you not?
Well, that's true, but a treaty is rather more solemn and binding than a here today, gone tomorrow decision of a parliament.
I'll have to double check this, but if I heard correctly, I don't think this even had treaty status because it hadn't passed the Senate. And it was a case of he looked at it, and again, it was too dangerous to give it any sort of honor. No one did the due diligence on this one, and I don't blame them. I'd rather that Mr. Obama and Mr. Kerry had better negotiated and were more interested in making sure that it was an equitable treaty as opposed to just getting a signature on a piece of paper. Again, I think they gave away the esteem of the United States and what it stands for very easily for nothing in return. And again, the stakes are too high. So now, of course, you have the arguments of, well, Iran is keeping to the treaty. They haven't broken the treaty. Well, I don't disagree. They haven't broken the treaty, but if you probably look at the terms involved, it's probably as easy to keep that treaty as it is to keep snow in Alaska. So that's
well, you can't. But you can't. Yeah, I mean, I take that point, Charlie. Your point is that it was a bad treaty. You're not claiming that Iran has broken the treaty because that would be ridiculous. Because everyone who inspects Iran has concluded that they haven't broken any part of the treaty. So what we're having is one U.S. president scrapping a treaty that his predecessor signed. Now, my last question to you would be, is this as much about Trump's hatred of Obama as it is about feeling towards Iran?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure someone sort of there's not much of a respect for either gentleman towards the other. But that said, he is, and you look at the things he's done in the past.
Look, Charlie, I'm going to quit while we're ahead because we're losing the line. I'm deeply grateful to you, as always, for joining me on the show. Charlie Wolf, political commentator, Republican, American abroad, and all round, he's game for an argument.